Hello there. Today I want to do a simple second channel video taking a look at a script I wrote to help post-process scanned images from a book or document that you're trying to digitize. Now, this is not a trivial program to use, and it's meant to handle some pretty weird edge cases that you can have with scanning. I was inspired to write this after I came across a Data General manual that has an insane page order that you'll see in a moment, but I really needed a tool like this to just work through scans a lot more quickly. I've tried some programs like ScanTailor, and they just didn't fit my needs, and I needed to write something myself for this. In the past, I've just used bash scripts to do this, and I needed something a lot more consistent. So this is a well thought out application that allows you to work through and define a full post-processing set of steps for a folder of scanned files. So you can take something like just this and output a PDF from it directly. So let me walk you through what this program is and what it can do. So over here is the GitHub repository where you can download this. This program is a single Python file. There's probably a way of downloading this or pip or something that I don't know about because I don't do software distribution, but I should probably learn that someday. But this is just one thing. You need Wand and OCR My PDF installed to make it work. And ImageMagick may be installed on your system. I don't know if Wand installs that for you. And you're definitely going to have to modify your ImageMagick policy XML file because this thing uses a lot of resources, as we'll see. There's a lot in this program, but not a lot to look at in the code. There's no like amazing parts of this that seem revolutionary. Most of the logic is in this section right here that just works on page ordering, which is really complicated for some documents. And we'll take a look at a bunch of different page order types here so you can understand what I'm talking about. So don't really worry about what's in the code. It really doesn't do that much exciting stuff like this. Ooh, wow, it's just a list of ImageMagick commands. So not a whole lot going on in here, really. But it's the way that it all handles the workflow for you that makes it really useful. So let's start out with a really basic example of a scan. This is a loose sheet paper document that I got with one of my IMSI computers. And this is a manual for some kind of program called Shakedown. Looks like it's a mem test, maybe a disk tester. I did not have this post-processed, it appears, and I scanned it a long time ago. So we'll go ahead and do this now. I do already have this on archive.org, but we'll just get this taken care of here as our first example. It's a nice short manual, but it does have a weird thing. I scanned this on an ADF that has a bad topside sensor. So this was effectively a single-sided ADF scan, which means you can see that the binder holes are all on the left side here, but then I'll get through half of the document and they will flip over to the right side. This is because I fed each sheet through the scanner and then they stacked up in reverse order and then I put that in the scanner. So we end up with this ascending set of odd numbers and then a descending set of even numbers at the midpoint of the set of files. So we have some work to do if we want this to be properly collated in our PDF. Now, the scan to PDF program is very easy to use. We can just run scan to PDF, tell it that we want to include all JPEG files in this directory and run it, and it will output a PDF with all of these files in it. Now, in this instance, it's not doing any processing, and no, this will not try to automatically determine anything. There is too much weirdness in different kinds of publications and page numbering to even attempt to do that. I have so many books that have chapters and sub-page indexing. You know, you have a mix of Roman numeral and decimal. You have advertisements that don't even put page numbers on the pages, so it's just not worth trying, and just coming up with rules to process everything makes a lot more sense. Now, just running everything through here, we have all of the pages in order in our PDF, and that will work out fine for something like, say, a bunch of loose binder pages that you slapped into a flatbed, flipped over, and then moved on to the next one. Maybe like I should have with this. This wasn't that many pages, but I didn't. So I have this ADF set here. Now, this page order in this PDF was incorrect. So we need to fix this. But there's another thing you may have noticed. My AutoDock scanner left this tail on the bottom. Well, we can crop that out here. So let's add our first parameter to this. Note that all parameters must go in front of the files. So what we'll do is we'll add those back at the end. So we're going to add a margin crop. This is provided as a list that is left, right, top, bottom. So in this case, we want to crop off the bottom. Now, we're not going to do this automatically, though you could, but it may not work super great on this. But what I would recommend doing is opening the scan in an image editor, using the select tool to select the area that you want to remove with the margin command, and then figuring out what the size of your box is here. So in this case, it's about 2000 pixels-ish that I want to remove. So I'm going to set my bottom margin to 2000. I can just run this again here to see what those results look like. And here is our output. The bottom part of the page is now removed. Now we could do the same thing again here to crop off these sides where I ran deskew during the scan process. I do regret that because this is a copy of another page and their copies were slightly skewed, which means the text isn't parallel to the paper all the time. So it's a little weird, but that got us our pages cropped good enough for now. Next, we need to correct the page order. And this is actually an edge case that doesn't utilize the really powerful page order feature in this. The ADF stack flip is kind of unique. So to fix this, there's actually just a single parameter F, which stands for stack flip. So we'll just pop that in there. It's going to process that again, and you'll see now it's counting up odd numbers, and then it will count down even numbers. I guess I should have clarified, this is the file that it's working on. This is the PDF page number that it's going to use. And then later on, this will be whether or not it is the left or right half of the page. So now our output file has the binder holes line up where you would expect. This is our cover here, so it's on the front. And then the page numbers, if we zoom into here, are 4, 5, 6, 7, everything is looking much better here. So that's an example of a very simple, just ADF with a little flip in there. Now let's do something more likely to be complicated for most people and what most programs like, say, Scantailor will try and work with. And that is a bound book where you take the book, open it up, and then just mash it flat onto a flat scan bed. And that is where the real powerful page ordering comes into play here. Now, turns out I actually don't have a scan where I've ever done that because I've been so particular about the Caesars or the A-Vision, but we're going to pretend that this document is that, even though this is actually a saddle stitch book that I removed the binding on. I'll get to what that means in a moment with another example, but we're going to pretend that these are just in the order as if this was a flat scanned book. So there would normally be a margin in the middle, and you might want to, actually, I don't have a good way of cropping out that margin. All right, so there might be a feature coming in the future for a post-split margin removal. I will have to look into that. I need some samples of a book that was scanned flat like that, I think. Because, yeah, that would probably be helpful. Anyway, this won't do that for now, but I can show you how you would correctly order the pages like this. So let's run the scan to PDF here, although let's not run it yet, because we've already seen what will happen. It will just put all of these files in order in a PDF and with no processing. So what we need to do is start our processing. And this, as I mentioned, is where the layouts come into play. Now, we're going to be able to use one of the layout presets for this, and that preset is a bound book scanned while held open flat against a scan bed with flat to page here. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to use the layout preset flag. I'm going to set this as my parameter, and then I'm going to bring in all of my JPEGs. But before I do that, you could see here that these images are rotated right. Now, I'm not doing this part automatically for this type because some books will be narrow enough that you could scan them on, say, a smaller scanner horizontally, but sometimes bigger books will need to be scanned vertically, which makes the text sideways. So I'm going to leave it up to the user here to add a rotate option, and then we're just going to rotate that 90 degrees. This will happen before it splits the pages out. So we're going to do that, and now you'll see our page numbers are going up, but they're going up 2 pages per image, and we're getting left and right outputs here. So as this gets through the last image, it will then start to build our PDF, and that PDF is now split and orientated correctly. So that's a very quick and easy way to split a 2-page scan like that. But there's a cool feature that I've added for this. So let's say you're scanning a book that you know is all gray inside and you don't want color. So this book in particular has these stains inside. We don't really need to see that. Well, there is a grayscale option that you can apply. So we'll just add --grayscale. But let's say this book has color covers, which this one actually does. So here's an example of the back, and here is the front. Well, you can add these colors as pre and postfix pages to this before the files here are processed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add -C for the cover, and then we're going to go covers front, and then I'm going to do -Z for the rear cover. And these will now be applied before and after all of the other pages. Now, the covers do not get any post-processing. They are just put directly into the image. So if you want these to be color and everything else to be grayscale, that makes that possible. But you do have to split these out and do any color correction that you want beforehand. So now I will run this again, and you'll see that the interior pages will be grayscale and the covers will be color. All right, my PDF has reloaded. We can see here is our color cover, but then it has desaturated everything in between the covers. It's a very handy feature for stuff like this where things just don't necessarily look the best. Now, we could do some color leveling on this to improve the image, get rid of those wrinkles, but I have a better example of that shows off another page layout format. So let's move on to my Intel system data catalog. Yeah, so this is scanned on my AVision Book Edge scanner. And the way this works is you open the book and you put the edge of the book on the scanner like that. But then to scan the other side, you have to rotate the book and put it on like that, which means every other page is upside down. This is a little trickier to do programmatically without just hard coding something. But I did come up with a way for doing this. Now, in that last example here, the flat 2 page is actually using the page order parameter here and specifying a preset page order. I do have a preset for the Book Edge version here, but we're not going to use that here. I want to show you how this works. So because we used a Book Edge scanner, we don't have to split the pages. The only thing we have to do is rotate them. Although I am going to bring back in that margin crop feature because there was something wrong with my scanner where the edge towards the Book Edge actually gets a little dark and weird looking here. I am really not sure what is wrong with my scanner. I still haven't been able to fix this after like 2 years. But we want to crop that out. So let's start building a command for this. I'll mention here that I also have color covers for this that I'm going to include. So let's build up a command. Now I'm going to build this command in a text editor here, so it's a little easier to see because we're going to start to get into some of the more complicated features. So first here I have my margins. We are cropping the right side in by 93 pixels. I measured that in GIMP. We are adding the front and back covers to this, and then including all JPEGs in the folder. So now we need to add the page ordering. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the -p parameter for the page order, and then we're going to make a multi-dimensional array. And if you're not a programmer, this might be a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, but I'm going to walk you through this. So first off here, let me just add this to indicate the end of the line. So The first thing you need is to put everything in braces here. This is indicating that everything in between this is the data for this parameter. Then we're going to add another set of braces in here, and this represents one image file. So every internal brace inside of the external braces references one image file in your directory. This does not represent a page. Numbers inside of this do represent a page. So here we have the first page in the first image. This is actually the default option that just adds one page per one image when you just give it all of the images in a folder. But what we can do is something a little more tricky. So I'm going to add a comma and then a second image holder. So this represents the first image, this represents the second image. And now we know that it is page 1 and page 2. Now this is functionally equivalent to just this, because the way this works is what this will do is it will see, I have to work on a sequence of images in order as I go through. So it'll see this, and then it will, instead of just working on this file, it'll work on that file along with the next file. And it will know this contains page 1 and this contains page 2. Now let's say you had a set of files scanned through an ADF and you accidentally got the file order backwards. Let's say all of the pages were stacked in the wrong order. Well, you could very easily reorder them in your PDF by just changing 2 and 1 here. Because what it would do is it would see we're working on sequences of 2 image files, and then it would look in here and see that the page number for the first one would be 2 and the page number for the second one would be 1. So it would mark this as page 2 and this as page 1. Now it will get through this sequence of images and then reset and then go to the next sequence of images. These are treated as offsets from the beginning of it as it works through each sequence. So we can use this to define a page order, and we will do that later, but for right now, we just need to set 1 and 2 because we need to rotate the second image, because the second image is the one that is upside down. And we can do this by adding a decimal point to this that indicates the number of 90-degree rotations to apply to the image. So we're telling this we need to rotate this 90 degrees twice, and then it will be rotated correctly. Now, it's important to note that the order of processes in here is fixed. Margin crop is always applied first, any automatic trimming is applied second, then color, then rotation, then grayscaling, and then the page isolation and rotating. This is just something to keep in mind because the idea is that you work more on the scan itself at the top and more on the pages on the bottom as you start to isolate them from each scan image. So let's walk through this one more time. This line will say on the first image, we do nothing, but we set it to page 1. On the second image, we set it to page 2, but we also rotate it 90 degrees twice. But before that, the margin crop will be applied to the photo and crop off the right side by 93 pixels. And we are post-fixing and prefixing a back and front cover. So let's go ahead and copy this and run that and see what we get. All right, opening our output, we have the catalog page there. That's the inside cover. That's the first page, upright as it should be. And everything is looking good from here. All of the text is upright and that black area has been cropped out. So that's all almost perfect. I mentioned that you can do some color adjustments, and this shows exactly why you would want to do that. The pages in this Intel catalog are so thin that you can very easily see the ink bleeding through from the backside. So we need to do some color adjustments to try and make this less obvious. This is bad enough that if we tried to OCR it later, it might actually try and OCR that text through the paper. But there's easily a way of doing this. Let's pick one of our images here, and I'm going to open this up with GIMP again. Now here we can see we have our text that should be mostly black, and then we have our paper that should be mostly white, but the black here is a little bright. It's kind of gray, and then the paper is definitely not fully white and bleeding text through. So the easiest way to correct this is the level. And what this allows us to do is to set the white point to be brighter and the black point to be darker. Anything above or below those points is just dropped off. It is gone. So now if we zoom in, we can see our black is very black and our whites are very white, and the in-between colors in there just disappeared. Now you have to be careful with this. Let me bring in a scan with a photo here. Let me just rotate this around to make it easier. So if we do that exact same thing where we bring this in like this and that in like that, our image can start to look a little crunchy because our gamma no longer makes sense. Well, you can move the gamma in the middle and that will adjust the image to look more correct. And you can use that to balance it. Like, let's say we want this text to be perfectly black. And then we want to make sure that our white is fully white, although I wouldn't recommend that. Sometimes having some paper texture is not bad, but in this case, we need to eliminate all of that bleed through text. So we have to go pretty aggressive on this. And then we'll want to play with our gamma to make sure that we get a good balance here somewhere that looks right. That looks pretty good there. So we can see 61 is our value here and 218 there and 1.5-ish there. Now we can input these values into the script and have it automatically apply this leveling process to every single page, except the covers, because again, those do not get any processing applied. Now there's one unfortunate problem here, and that is that GIMP uses a 255 color max value, whereas ImageMagick, which this uses in the background, does not, and it works as percentages because it can support different color depths. And maybe if we change the color mode in this to a different color depth, these values would change. But no matter what, this doesn't quite work. One option you have here is you can open a calculator, and what we could do is say 61 divided by 255 would be 0.23. So for the black point, we will enter 0.23. So let's do this. For black, it is 0.23. Then we can do the same for white, and we can do the same for gamma. Now, gamma actually is already a percentage value here effectively, so we can just enter 1.58 already. For white, we have to do the same thing, 218 divided by 255, and our value is 85, so 0.85. You can also kind of rough guess this. Every 25 is 10%, every 50 is 20%. So I usually just do that and then kind of round it to the nearest 0.5. Usually gets close enough, but you can do it this way as well to be more precise. So now I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to rerun that on our page. All right. It has finished, so we can see our cover remains untouched, but now as we scroll down, we're not getting any of that bleed through here. All of the text is much easier to read because we darkened it, we whitened up the paper, and the bleed through is eliminated. So that is a very handy way to do color processing in this automatically. Now again, I most of the time don't recommend fully crunching stuff like this, but it's a very helpful way of being able to fix some issues like with that text bleed through. All right, now let's move on to another example. And this is a saddle stitch book, as I mentioned. So first off, what is a saddle stitch book? Well, this is the actual book that I worked from here. I don't have this here. I've taken this to the office, so I only have these two photos that I can easily show you here. But this book is staple bound. You can see the 2 points here where the staples are pinching in. This means that the pages are completely flat and wrap around the book. So you can see how it curves right there. So what you can do to scan a book like this is instead of just opening it and folding it flat, you can remove the staples and then scan each page separately. And what you get when you do that is something that looks like this. Now this results in a weird page order. This is the cover and this is the inside of the cover. But what this really is page 1 and then the very end of the book right here on the inside. If we go over 1, it flips, and then this becomes page 2, and then this becomes the second to last page. And this continues through. This is actually the last photo in the book. And then this is the third page from the front, or the second page that has anything printed on it that's not the cover. So the page ordering becomes very strange when you do this, but this can be accounted for with my scan tool. I'm not aware of anything else that can handle this, but this isn't even the weirdest one of these that I've had to deal with. All right, I've set up a basic command here for us to start with, and I've already figured out what the color correction is for this book, so we'll have this look better in our final results. But we're going to determine what the page order here is now. So we know that we're going to have 2 pages per scan, and we have 2 scans that are related to each other because it is the front and back, and those page numbers alternate on the front and back sides. Let's actually open these up and look at this, but we can start to fill in our page order list right now because we know there will be 2 images and each image will have 2 pages. So we're going to have 4 values we need to put in here. Now I'm going to use this image viewing program because this allows me to make changes here without saving them so we can see what this will look like after the rotation step. Now this is our first page. So let's look at what we have here. We have the last possible page of the book on the left, and then the first possible page of the book on the right. This software always works from left to right, so it's important to keep that in mind. So this we will actually declare here as -1, and then this we will declare as page 1. Now, if you input a negative value into the page order, instead of putting it in the normal sequential sequence starting from the beginning of the book, it will work backwards from the end of the book. So stating this as -1 says this is the first page from the back of the book. Now we go to the second one here. We can see this is the inside of the front cover, which would make this page 2. And then we have the inside of the back cover, which would make this page -2. This is why I had to write this software. This gets complicated, and this is, again, not even the worst one. But this is now the proper page sequence for it to process all of the 2-page scans that are related to each other for the front and back of each page. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this into my command window and run that to see what it generates. So we can see as it goes here, the first page is marked as page 68 because it takes the total number of scans that are in this folder and multiplies that by 2 because it also knows that there are 2 pages per scan. And then it numbered it starting from the back. Then the other page started from the front. It reaches the inside where the left side is starting from the front. And then it goes to the right side that is starting from the back. And it's counting inwards from the book. So we'll see these 2 numbers will slowly start to get closer as it works to the end of the scans, which is the dead center of the book. Now there's another thing that I'm going to demonstrate with this particular scan that is going to require me to run it on all pages. And it will make sense why I need to do this in a moment, because there is another problem with saddle stitch books that this software can also account for. Again, as far as I'm aware, no other software can do this. And as we're getting to the final image in the sequence here, we can see the numbers are almost sequential there. 36, 33, 34, 35. Those are all in the same sequence. So it's now done and it's working on generating the final PDF output. And after opening this, we can take a look at it and we can see the pages are now in the correct order. Here's the inside of this cover and then the first handful of pages there. And then in this particular instance, this book is just a bunch of ads that companies could replace their names with for doing system reseller bundles of Data General hardware. It's kind of a really cool book, but every single page on the left side is actually blank as a result. But if I scroll quickly here, you'll notice the left side of the scans starts to move in. And if we look at the beginning here, we'll see the staples are in the center, but at the middle of the scan, the staples have wandered over onto the right image. What's going on there? Well, saddle stitch books are paper that has been folded and wrapped around each other. This means that the outside paper is longer than the inside paper. I've taken the first page of the book here, and I have the middle page of the book here. You can see this black area here is where that's how much the page has shrunk going into the middle. And the other thing that happens, because I aligned the page on the right side as I was scanning it, you'll see that doesn't happen over there. That means that this staple position shrinks by half of the distance of the difference between these two pages. But I've added a way to correct for this. Now, as long as you scan all of your pages with the exact same crop size, when you get to the last page for a saddle stitch book, which would be the middle of the actual book, we can take this distance here, which is approximately 180 pixels, and we can use this to linearly calculate the shrink factor of every single page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another parameter here for shrink, and I'm going to set this to 180 pixels. Now, this is a unique parameter for saddle stitch scanning, but it's very necessary to correct this issue. So now I'm going to run this again, and on the first page, it will not remove anything from the left side, but by the last scanned image here, it will be removing 180 pixels from the left side. So let me rerun this, and we'll see what those results look like. All right, it just finished processing everything, and our real test is looking at the staple position. So we can see here again that they're roughly in the middle there, and if I scroll down to the middle, you'll first off see both pages start to shrink in, but the staple is now mostly in the middle of the page. You can tune this value for, what you need. Looks like maybe more than 180, or maybe that's dead on correct right there as it keeps going. But yeah, you could mess with that, but you can see the pages get wider as you go towards the top of the book. If I narrow the window slightly, it'll become even more obvious. And they shrink in as you get towards the center. So yeah, this is a weird feature that I had to add to correct for that. That again only happens when you take the page and you put one of the sides fully up against the edge, but there's no real way to directly center it unless you're scanning as a book edge, which defeats the whole point of doing the unbound saddle stitch scanning here. So that's another method that I've had to add to help correct some of the weird scan setups that you can have here. But that makes this kind of book very easy to process in one command. All right, I've hyped it up enough. Let's get to the nightmare one, the Data General System Generation Manual. So first off here, there's like so much to do with this one. The cover actually has a hole in it. And they would put the first page behind that, so you would see through to that. That would let them print one fancy color cover and reuse it for everything because they were cheap. But I just went ahead and scanned it like that. So I have a front TIFF here, and that was basically required for this because no matter what, the way that you would scan that, it wouldn't work if you were just feeding it through. But speaking of feeding it through, let me go ahead and do a rotation here on this first sheet and walk you through what nonsense Data General has done here. Now you'll notice this is 3-ring bound, and I have flat scanned what is 2 sheets of paper, but they are attached in the middle. This is not saddle stitch. This is something wholly unique to Data General as far as I'm aware. At least I tried to find different kinds of binding methods described online, and I couldn't find anything like this. But what this is some kind of sequential 2-page 3-ring binder method. So what this is page 1 on the right. Then you flip it over. This is page 2. And then this is page 3. And then we go back. This is page 4. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 as our order, which is really, really weird. And every single page in this document is like this. So this is why I had to write this script to be able to handle processing this, because this actually is like over 100 pages, I think. So I needed something to automate this for sure, or I was going to lose my mind trying to manually crop these out one at a time and save them as separate pages. I ain't doing that. Computers exist for a reason, and that's to do my work for me. So let's look at what this nightmare would be. All right, here's my basic setup again here with some minor color correction already included. And let's figure this out. So because this is two-sided and the pages are very related, we are definitely going to have two scanned images in the sequence. And then we get to the page order. So we know this is page 4 here on the first one, and then it's page 1 over here. Go to the next page. This is page 2 here, and then that is page 3. So that is the page order process for this super weird manual. Now, thankfully, there's nothing else super strange I need to do with this, so I will also use this as an opportunity to demonstrate one of the other features of this software, and that is OCR. I was able to directly integrate OCR My PDF, which is a Tesseract-based PDF OCR application, into this to be able to run it from within here. And using this, we can OCR the image. We can also do some other things like add a title, and we'll go ahead and just title this DG Sysgen. If I was doing this for real, I would make this a little more accurate to the document. We can also do an optimization flag. 2 is what I usually like to do with this. And we can do a JPEG compression, and I'm going to set this to 80% here. Now, other than the full name parameters like this, all of the OCR My PDF unique parameters that do not get applied anywhere else but the OCR My PDF stage use capital letters, with one exception. If you run scan to PDF with capital H, it'll show a big chunk of the README here so that you can have online help for how this stuff actually works. Because again, this is a really complicated, nerdy thing that's difficult to wrap your head around. So everything there looks good. We have our crazy custom page order for the 2-page thing. We have our 90-degree rotation. We have front and back covers that are put in this folder. And then we're going to OCR it, title it, and optimize the images and JPEG compress it. You would be surprised at how much that can reduce the file size without noticeably impacting the image quality. So that's actually a really nice feature to run. But let's go ahead and run it. Now, this is just a small portion of this document. A lot of these I was only doing part of it because it takes a long time to process stuff and a lot of system resources. So if I bring up the resource monitor here and we look at processes, you'll see the memory usage of this is just gonna skyrocket. And that's because everything is held in RAM as it's working on it until it fills the allocated buffer, and then it starts caching files to the disk. So you need either a lot of memory or a lot of cache space to work, and it is of course slower once it dips into the cache space. So I've been trying to keep the demos short here, but this can take quite a while to run. And we'll see here as it finishes this up, writes out this PDF, and then goes to the OCR My PDF stage, the CPU and memory are going to do some different things as it starts to run Tesseract to try and figure some stuff out. So CPU usage skyrocketing now. And it has also loaded a good chunk of it into RAM. Now I'll mention as alternative options here that you can run. If you want to see what the individual image files are, you can run an E for export parameter and then provide a directory where you want the files to go. So if you did E test, every single page that would go into the PDF will be saved as a JPEG in a test folder. And then you can review what the different modifications you're making to each page look like and decide if you want to modify them. There isn't a way to disable the final PDF output. I might do that at some point, but I feel like that's not super critical, so I haven't added that. But OCR is an optional step, which means that the optimization and JPEG compression, which are tied to that, are only triggered if you run the OCR stage. And I don't have it in the image magic step because I don't want to, say, reuse the image compression from the OCR My PDF stage in the image magic stage and then double compress the images, although I could have it. Look, if you're gonna OCR, it's a lot more logic to add than we don't really need, because you're probably going to OCR most of everything. Speaking of which, here is our output with OCR. With the minor color correction here, you can see how good this turns out. I can come in here and I can select some text, and it works extremely well. I think OCR my PDF. Yeah, look at that. It's really good. Getting the registered trademark. Micronova TM, a little weird there because it didn't quite recognize the superscript, or maybe Kate just doesn't support superscript, actually. That's totally possible. But yeah, I really like OCR my PDF. If you had a book or document, manual, whatever, that has more sensible page numbers, it can figure out that this is an index sometimes, but these are chapter and page numbers, like hybrids things in here. So it had no chance of figuring that out. But I think that is everything I wanted to demonstrate with my Scan to PDF tool. This was a really not that complicated script program thing to write, but it is very complicated to use because I had to expose so much power through that page order. Now, pretty much everything that we did there, unbound saddle stitch, flat 2-page, flat with single pages, and edge rotation are all provided as layout presets, and to use those instead of putting in the complicated page numbering, this is my cheat sheet here for each one of the folders, instead of having to put in the complicated page numbering, you can just use, say, L edge rotate for alternating the rotation for the book for an edge scanner, or L unbound saddle stitch, which will automatically calculate from the end and the beginning for each page as it goes towards the middle. So I've tried to make this as easy to use as possible with those presets. If anyone has any additional presets that would make sense to add for different scan methods that I don't know about, I would be open to that. But there are definitely unique ones like this stupid Data General Sysgen manual that have awful weird ones that I don't think belong in there, just because it would be more likely to confuse anyone than help. So, but if you have a stupid, weird, complicated one like that, you can definitely add it there because this has the power to do that. But I think that'll be it for this. So hopefully this program is helpful to someone, and this video helps you understand what it can do, how it can do it, and all of that fun stuff. If you want to install this, you'll just want to pip install wand and OCR my PDF there. And then you will need to look at your ImageMagick policy file here and modify the memory and disk values that I was mentioning. You'll want to bump those up a fair bit. Even these might be a little on the low side. I think I currently have this computer set to like 50 gigs for disk cache and maybe 8 gigs for memory. It can hit pretty hard. But yeah. So yeah. Hopefully this is helpful to some people, and I'll see you next time.